Hey, Mark, how you doing? Thanks for kicking things off here. I really appreciate that. Okay, so these look good. Okay, the first thing I want to mention is they work. I think they work. I think you're doing a pretty good job establishing hierarchy. There's a couple of things that seem to be missing from the assignments, and namely, I think I'm not seeing a solid, consistent underlying grid. So the first thing that you should do in this assignment is establish a grid and use that grid for all four compositions. Now, the reason I'm saying that I'm not seeing an underlying grid, it really depends on how many columns you're using. Sometimes it's difficult to tell without seeing the grid, but right now, this distance between where the type starts here and the edge of the page seems to be a little bit less than this distance here. So that indicates a little broken grid right there. And again, it depends on how many columns you have in your grid, but there's another area indicating a broken grid too, and that is this distance right here. You're right here. Let me see. No, actually, no, those look pretty good. So yeah, this is the only area of concern. So now don't forget, in the grid, you should be able to lay your grid over your designs and everything should align. Everything should really align to a vertical partition in your grid. So like this right here, see? And let me show you how this works. Do you see what I'm saying? So here's your vertical columns, right? And then you can see that the type aligns within. In this example, it spans two columns, but you can see exactly what I mean right here. So your type should adhere to one of the columns in your grid, right? So that looks there like it's a little inconsistent depending on how many columns you have. I think, yeah, I didn't really see any mention of how the grid was set up. So watch that. Okay. The next thing that we're seeing is you're using the image in all four examples, and the image only is used in the fourth example. And these need to be black and white and shades of gray. Okay, that's all right over here. This is the course announcements I was in, by the way, here, looking at these different grids. And then over here in the let me see. Oh, right here. This is assignment 3, part 1. You can see right here shades of black, white, shades of gray. Okay, and then so your setup is okay. You're 5 by 5 on a 15 by 20 black background. That's great. 5 by 5 squares. That's great. So no images in the first three, right? So the first three, you use the same grid for all four. All right, use only black, white, shades of gray. The first is I have no contrast in weight or size or weight, which you have here, but you are in this one. It asks you to establish some sort of hierarchy based on grouping. So typically, what you would do is you would find what the commonalities are here and group what belongs together, and it can be as simply as just adding a little space between, you know, the same exact same setup here, but just a little bit of space just to establish some hierarchy based on grouping. In the second design, you have one new size and one new weight, which you have. You've got a new size and a new weight right here. Okay, so that works. In the third, it's multiple contrasts in size, scale, and weight. So you've got that to an extent right here, but I think that adding the image here is kind of forcing your type up here. A lot of this should be, the first three should be strictly typographic, establishing typographic hierarchy using only typography, right? Then the second one, you add your image. Again, I think this is good. When it comes down to it, this type treatment right here isn't garnering any more hierarchy than this right here, because it's bigger, it's different, just happens to be a little bit bigger and a little bit more different. You see what I'm saying? So try to establish different types of hierarchies. Now I'm going to show you an example, which I don't usually do in this class, but I think this is important. So this is using a basics, I believe it's a 6-column grid. So the same grid is applicable to all four layouts. So right here you've got this exact same size and weight. So the only differences here are placement. So the only thing that's creating contrast and hierarchy here is based on grouping. Okay, the second one here, we have a new size right here and a new weight right here. Okay, other than that, everything else remains the same. And then the third, we have multiple sizes, multiple weights, and again, adhering to the underlying grid. Then in the fourth one, we still use multiple sizes, multiple weights, adhering to the grid, but this time we introduce the black and white image that's bleeding on two sides of the composition, and of definitely breaking the grid, as we can even just see by these margins right here, breaking that grid there and there. Okay, so those would be my recommendations moving forward. It's, a lot of it is successful. It's just a little bit of fine tuning and really pay attention to those project requirements. Okay, any questions at all, please let me know. Thanks, man.